Spider-Man is one of the most famous superheroes of all time. He swings around New York, stops bad guys, and saves lives. But have you ever wondered, how legal is everything he does? Sure, he's doing good, but technically, a lot of his actions are against the law. Think about it. He beats up criminals, breaks into buildings, causes tons of property damage, and constantly runs from the police. In the real world, people don't just get away with that. No matter how many villains he stops, Spider-Man would probably be looking at a long list of charges if he ever got arrested. So let's take a closer look at his crimes and figure out how much time he'd actually spend in prison. Would he get a short sentence, or would he be locked up for life? Let's break it down. Spider-Man might be a hero to the people of New York, but to the law, he's something else, a vigilante. And that's a big problem. In most places, you can't just take the law into your own hands. Even if you're stopping a crime, fighting criminals without being a police officer or licensed security officer is illegal. This means that every time Spider-Man punches, kicks, or webs up a bad guy, he could be charged with assault. Now, some might argue that he's just defending himself, but self-defense only applies when someone is directly threatening you, and Spider-Man often goes looking for trouble. If a regular person put on a mask and started fighting criminals on the street, they'd be arrested. So why would it be any different for him? In New York, assault charges range from a few years to over 20 years in prison, depending on the severity. Since Spider-Man has fought hundreds of criminals, it's safe to say his sentence would stack up quickly. Even if he got a lighter punishment for each fight, the sheer number of incidents would land him in prison for decades. Spider-Man doesn't just fight crime, he also destroys a lot of property along the way. Whether he's swinging between skyscrapers, crashing through windows, or throwing bad guys into cars, someone has to pay for all that damage. And in the real world, that would be a serious legal problem. Let's start with the basics. Smashing through a window? That's vandalism. Destroying a car during a fight? That's property damage. Knocking down parts of a building? That could lead to massive lawsuits. New York takes property damage seriously. Depending on the cost of repairs, Spider-Man could face fines and jail time. If the damage is worth more than $1,500, it's considered a felony, which means he could serve up to 7 years per incident, and considering the number of times he's crashed into buildings or wrecked the streets, those years would add up fast. At this rate, Spider-Man might not need a mask, he'd need a really good lawyer. Spider-Man doesn't just swing around the city, he sneaks into places he's not supposed to be. Whether it's a villain's hideout, a police station, or a high-security lab like Oscorp, he's constantly breaking in without permission. In the real world, that's called trespassing. If he enters a building illegally, it's considered criminal trespass, which can get him fined or jailed for up to a year. But if he forces his way in, like breaking a lock or a window, that's breaking and entering, which is a much bigger crime. In some cases, this could land him up to 15 years in prison per offense. And let's be honest, Spider-Man does this all the time. Spider-Man has a habit of leaving criminals stuck to walls, streetlights, and even moving vehicles with his webbing. It looks cool in the movies, but in real life, this could get him in serious legal trouble. Legally, this is called unlawful restraint, which means keeping someone from moving freely without their consent. Even though he's catching criminals, he's not a cop, so he has no legal right to detain anyone. In New York, unlawful restraint can lead to up to 7 years in prison per incident. And what about webbing someone up and carrying them across the city? That could be seen as kidnapping, which carries an even harsher penalty. Swinging through the city at high speeds might look amazing, but it's also extremely dangerous. Spider-Man zooms over crowded streets, between skyscrapers, and sometimes even near moving trains and helicopters. One wrong move, and he could seriously hurt or kill someone. In legal terms, this falls under reckless endangerment, when someone's actions put others at serious risk. Then there are the battles. Explosions, collapsing buildings, and web slinging through traffic put innocent people at risk all the time. Even if Spider-Man is trying to protect the city, he's also creating massive dangers for regular people. Spider-Man might save the city, but the police don't always see him as a hero. In fact, they've tried to arrest him many times, and he almost always runs away. In the real world, that's a serious crime. When someone refuses to stop for the police, it's called evading arrest. If they actively resist, it becomes resisting arrest, which can lead to 1 year in jail per offense. And let's be honest, Spider-Man resists arrest a lot. even worse, he sometimes fights back against law enforcement. Sure, it's usually self-defense, but in legal terms, that doesn't matter much. Assaulting a police officer is a felony, with a sentence of up to 7 years per incident. Spider-Man is a genius, but sometimes he uses his brains to hack into systems he shouldn't be touching, whether it's breaking into Oscorp's servers, accessing police databases, or even hacking S.H.I.E.L.D. He's committed more than a few cybercrimes. In the real world, this is unauthorized access to a computer system, a crime that can carry up to 10 years in prison per offense. If he stole or leaked any data, the sentence could be even longer. Even though he's usually hacking for a good reason, the law doesn't make exceptions for superheroes. Spider-Man has one big secret, his identity, but keeping it hidden has led him to commit fraud more than once. Peter Parker takes photos of Spider-Man and sells them to the Daily Bugle, without disclosing that he is Spider-Man. In legal terms, that's fraud, making money under false pretenses. Fraud charges can lead to up to 7 years in prison per case. And let's not forget the times he's impersonated others, like sneaking into places as someone else. That's identity fraud, which can add another 7 years per offense. Keeping his double life a secret could end up costing him a lot of time behind bars. Spider-Man doesn't kill people on purpose, but that doesn't mean he's off the hook. In real life, if someone dies because of your actions, even accidentally, you can still be charged with manslaughter. Think about all the fights he's had, explosions, collapsing buildings, high-speed chases. There's no way nobody has ever died because of the destruction caused. Even if Spider-Man didn't mean for it to happen, involuntary manslaughter could still apply. In New York, that carries a sentence of up to 15 years per death. Then there are moments like Gwen Stacy's death. When he tried to save her, the sudden stop from his web snapped her neck. Even though he didn't mean to hurt her, some courts might still see this as negligence. If the law counted every accidental death connected to his battles, Spider-Man wouldn't just be looking at years in prison, he could be looking at life behind bars. So if Spider-Man ever got arrested and charged for everything he's done, how long would he actually be in prison? Well, let's break it down. For fighting crime as a vigilante, 70 years in prison. For all the property damage, 200 years. For trespassing and breaking into buildings, 150 years. For webbing people up against their will, 200 years. For putting innocent people in danger, 70 years. For evading arrest and fighting police, 80 years. For hacking, fraud, and identity theft, 30 years. And for accidental deaths, 45 years. Altogether, Spider-Man would be facing at least 845 years in prison, plus possible life sentences. Sure, he's a hero to us, but in the real world, Spider-Man would never swing free again. So is Spider-Man a hero or a criminal? The truth is, he's both. Sure, he's saved countless lives, but the law doesn't make exceptions for good intentions. If he ever got caught, the courts wouldn't see him as a friendly neighborhood hero. They'd see a masked vigilante, guilty of hundreds of crimes. And with a sentence of at least 845 years in prison, plus possible life sentences, Spider-Man wouldn't be swinging through the city ever again. But here's the real question. Should Spider-Man be punished for his actions? Or does saving lives outweigh breaking the law? Let me know what you think. If you love these kinds of breakdowns, don't forget to subscribe for more.